Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about the things we can't see. Let's talk about 1, 2, 3 and how life is supposed to be. You are safe with me, so hear me out. There's so many things that we can talk about. So hear me out.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode. Well, not really episode, it's more of just like a teaser trailer of HeroMeOut. Welcome to the very first teaser. My name is Hero and I'm really happy to have you guys on board with me. I'm so happy because you guys were like so very supportive of me even before I started recording anything, even when I was just posting things in my Facebook page and all my socials. I wanted to do a podcast for so long already, and now I feel like I'm finally able to tick that off the box. But for now, of course, I still have to finish this podcast. So a few days ago, I posted a publication material asking for some questions from you guys, and I feel like what better way to answer your questions than through a teaser. And I hope that this teaser will introduce to you everything that you need to know about the podcast. Let's proceed to the questions that my friends have asked me. Thank you so much for all those who have asked questions through the comments and through messages in my socials. So the very first question is from Robin Yabyabin. What inspired you to start your own podcast? Um, well, technically, more than just my interest to start a podcast, it was also academically driven because I needed to think of something interesting and more of my niche. I believe. I hope that it's in my niche. I'm soon to discover that. For everyone's knowledge, this podcast is my undergraduate production thesis. So, this podcast would serve as my way out of UP Mindanao. Yeah, one of the things that I'm really interested in is starting my own podcast. I didn't want to do a thesis where I'm not interested in because I don't feel like I would thrive in it. Next question, Michael Frando. What will you cover in your podcast? I'm sure that you guys already know what I'll be covering in my podcast, and this is mental health. So I'll be talking a lot about mental health. I'll be having experts about mental health and public health experts, and I'll also be having friends and people with basically lived experiences about mental health and mental health illnesses. Why mental health? Asks JB Bitancor. I chose mental health because I think it's very timely today. Right now, we're talking about people who are having aggravated mental health illnesses because of COVID-19. And there are a lot of mental health advocacies, mental health programs, mental health projects that have been put on hold and have stagnated because of the pandemic. So yeah, because of this, we're constantly looking for ways in order to compensate for this lack caused by quarantine and social isolation. So yeah, I chose mental health because this is also something that I've been personally struggling with, in case anybody's wondering. So yeah, I hope that by conducting discussions about mental health, I'll be able to get some insights about many people, professional and experience-based input, and also you guys as well. I want you to be with me in this journey, and I hope that you guys would also be able to think of this podcast as a means to finally start seeking professional help. Next question from Ed Priete. How many episodes are there gonna be? So approximately I've mapped out and we've scattered about 8 episodes within March. So this is still tentative. It might go up, it might go down, the number of episodes, but yeah, around 8. From Bea Mateo, what topics are you going to talk about? Since I've already discussed that I'll be talking about mental health, let's talk about the specific topics that I'll be having. I don't want to dive deep that much academically and too technically because you guys would find it hard to understand or comprehend the things that I'll be saying if I start explaining my research to you guys. But basically, I'm relying on a model, and based on my research, I have constructed these episodes in order to hopefully be able to media streamline the discussions of mental health, because there are a lot of mental health podcasts out there. There are a lot of mental health programs in the media that are kind of convoluted in a way that they talk about mental health randomly, and I want to show them that mental health it's not something that you can discuss in just one episode, in just one sitting. Mental health, this needs to be dissected in an organized manner, and I hope that my construction of these messages and these podcast episodes would help be able to show you guys how mental health should be talked about when it comes to talking about MH in the media. Next question from Israel de la Torre. Who are your target audience? My target audience is the youth of the Philippines who are going through mental health illnesses and are having difficulties trying to seek professional help because of the pandemic, of course. Social isolation has really aggravated our behavior when it comes to seeking professional help because we can't go out, and going out scares us. Despite this, I want you guys to know that even if my target audience is the youth of the Philippines, this doesn't necessarily mean that those who don't identify as a youth in the Philippines mean that they won't benefit from this podcast. I'm sure that you guys will benefit for it too, but I just want to target the youth specifically because it's more frequent in the youth having mental health illnesses. And while this is more frequently common for the youth in the Philippines, it's also one of the most unaddressed problems around here. So there are a lot of people who refuse to seek professional help. I hope that by constructing discussions with you guys in here, I'd be able to help them learn that, oh, having mental health illnesses, that's not completely a bad thing. And that's something that I need to seek professional help on. Next question from Ivan Degawan. Thank you, Ivan, for the question. Would you consider having guests in your future episodes? Of course, a part of my podcast thesis includes having professional and experience-based guests around my episodes because I want to construct discussions with them, how they're coping, how they're going about their situation and their illnesses, and etc. So I'll be having like psychologists, public health experts, people expert in policies, and friends and family to talk about mental health. Yeah, so yeah, that's a quick hint, not exactly a sneak peek because I haven't actually revealed all my guests, but I'm hinting to you guys the guests that I'll be having. Next question is from Jana Alexandra. Thank you so much, Jana. What would be the schedule of your podcast? So a lot of people have already been asking me this, even through PMs or messages in Facebook. The schedule of my podcast, I think the very first episode will launch on Thursday. This Thursday. And then the approximately 8 episodes will be spread around March. So please stay tuned with my Facebook page for you guys to learn more. Okay, next question is from Leah Bungabong. Is there anything you're worried about starting this podcast, and how do you think you can overcome it? Yes, of course, there are a lot of things that I'm worried about. But if there's going to be one thing that I'm worried about starting this podcast, it's going to be about delivering with quality. In the end, I don't want this to be just another podcast that everyone's going to listen to, but I want this to be a podcast that helps people with regard to their mental health. I want to be able to deliver because I want to shape even just my own circle of listeners in this podcast, that mental health isn't something that should be taken lightly. How do I think I can overcome it? I think I can overcome it just by choosing to start, because I've been procrastinating this podcast a lot, and even this teaser, I've been procrastinating it a lot. I thought to myself and I said to myself that if I just start it, I will immediately get over it right after. So yeah, I think I can overcome it, and it doesn't matter whether or not I have audience that will listen to me or not, because at the end of the day, I want my messages and my insights to be available out there to anyone who needs it, even if that's just one person. And I'll be already honored enough. Hey, my podcast made a difference. Next question from Michelangelo Garbin. What areas of your podcast would you like to grow in? And how can we help support that growth? Of course, mental health, this is also something that I've been personally struggling with. So I hope that by constructing conversations, discussions with my guests and my friends here in the podcast, I would hopefully be able to get new insights, learn more, and probably help in my healing. And you guys can best help support that growth by starting to seek professional help if you haven't already, because that's the ultimate goal of my podcast, to help you guys start seeking professional help and improve your help-seeking behavior. Next, from Edmund Sia, how long did you prepare for this podcast? Oh, I prepared for this podcast for a long time, financially and also academically, because I've already started plotting a lot of things about the podcast and my plan since about a semester ago, last semester, even before last semester. Yeah, so it was that early. So it took me this long to be able to do it finally. This semester will be focused on the production process of the podcast. So I'll be producing podcast episodes. And for the last question, from Miss Dinah, thank you, Dinah. What's the goal of my podcast? The goal of my podcast is to help you guys start seeking professional help by confiding in the stories of the people that I'll be having and people that you would hopefully be able to relate to, in case there's anything that would grab your attention. So yeah, to improve the help-seeking behavior of the youth. And so that's basically it. I know what you guys are thinking right now. You're probably thinking like, that's Hero's voice? I am so disappointed. I'm sorry, but just a disclaimer, I want you guys to know that in the end, the purpose of my podcast is to be able to construct messages for the overall mental health of the youth in the Philippines and be able to help people start seeking professional help. So yeah, if there's anything that's going to be the least of my worries, it's going to be my voice. So I'm pretty sure you guys are already tired of hearing my voice this early on, even in just the trailer. Yeah, sorry about that. And yeah, I think that's it for this teaser. It's kind of long for a teaser, don't you think so? I think so. I'm sorry for keeping you long. I don't want to keep this podcast any longer. So I would just like to say thank you guys for the continued support of listening to my podcast. If you guys reach this part of the podcast, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I think I'm excited about the very first episode. So I guess stay tuned. Thank you so much. And I will hero you out in the next one.
La la, hear me out. La la la, you're not alone. La la la, hear me out. La la la, you're not alone. La la la, hear me out. La la la, there's so many things that we can talk about. So hear me out.